project your slides. Yeah.
Sir, I have projected it. Is it visible?
Okay. Yeah. Now it's visible. Now it's visible.
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening to one and all. Today I'm going to present a case of carcinoma buccal mucosa. 65-year-old male patient. He presented with the complaints of ulcer in the right cheek, inner aspect of the right cheek for the last 3 months. Initially, patient was apparently normal 3 months back when he noticed a small ulcer, which is progressively increasing in size and which bleeds on touch. There was no other similar lesions in the oral cavity. Patient did not have any complaints of pain. There was no restriction of mouth opening, no drooling of saliva, halitosis, and no history of any difficulty in speech. Coming to the past history, patient is a known tobacco chewer since the last 30 years. Patient is also a known hypertensive with no other comorbidities and no history of any tooth extraction. Moving on to the general physical examination, patient was moderately built and nourished with stable vitals and no other abnormalities on general examination. Going on to the clinical examination, on inspection, mouth opening was normal. There was an ulcerative growth of size 3 into 4 centimeters in the buccal mucosal region of the right cheek, extending anteriorly from 2 centimeters behind the right oral commissure, posteriorly up to the second molar, inferiorly up to the lower gingivo-buccal sulcus, and superiorly 4 centimeters from the upper gingivo-buccal sulcus. Margins were well defined and appeared raised. Floor was covered with unhealthy granulation. Adjacent floor of the mouth was normal. Oral hygiene was poor with the nicotine stain and carried tooth. No similar lesions elsewhere in the oral cavity, and there was no leukoplakia or erythroplakia. On palpation, the inspectory findings were confirmed. It's a non-tender ulcer which bleeds on touch. That ulcer was not adherent to the underlying soft tissue. There was no surrounding induration, and skin over the cheek in the region of the ulcer was pinchable. The retromolar region was free. The right and commissure and pericommissure areas were free. There was no mandible thickening on the right side. Tongue movements were normal and full, and there were no loose teeth. On examination of the neck, on inspection, there was no obvious swelling and no scars. On palpation, there were multiple lymph nodes found in levels 1, 2, and 3. Each level had a single lymph node of 2 into 2 centimeters, which was firm, mobile, and left side of the neck was normal. Other systems for systemic distant spread, the respiratory system was normal. The abdomen and the no body and abdomen was normal, and there was no bony tenderness. I also examined the potential flap donor sites. The upper limb, the anterior chest wall, and the lower limb were normal. With the history and the clinical examination, I like to give a probable diagnosis of carcinoma, buccal mucosa of the right cheek with the T3 N2B MX stage 4 with systemic hypertension. Going on to the investigations, my first investigations would be to confirm my diagnosis, where I would like to do a wedge biopsy from the ulcer edge and FNAC of the lymph node. For staging purposes, I would like to do the CECT head and neck, a pan endoscopy, chest X-ray, and USG abdomen. MRI findings for this patient was there was a diffuse thickening noted in the right cheek, extending from the canine, extending posteriorly till the last molar. There was no extension to the retromolar trigone. Lesion extends inferiorly to the inferior gingivo-buccal sulcus and alveolus. There was no bony erosion and marrow involvement. Tongue and masticator space were free. For the purpose of pre-anesthetic evaluation and nutritional assessment, I'd like to have investigations like CBC, ECG, and blood groping. And to plan my reconstruction, I would like to do a Doppler of the necessary region. My plan would be to go ahead with the wide local excision of the tumor with a 1 centimeter margin all around with simultaneous reconstruction. And a right-sided modified radical neck dissection, and if available, a frozen section to confirm the adequate tumor margin clearance, followed by adjuvant radiotherapy and chemotherapy based on histopathology.
Let me just stop you, Bandita.
Yes, ma'am.
So let us go back to the history.
Yes.
This was a short duration, right?
3 months.
2 months duration, painless. No history of any history of earache. You did not mention it.
Patient did not have any history of earache, ma'am.
neck exam. I just want.
Madam, your volume is very low.
Okay, I just come closer. Did you mention about the rest of the oral cavity?
No others on history or examination, ma'am. On history, he doesn't have any complaints of any other lesions. In the on examination as well, there were no other similar lesions.
Anything else apart from the lesions you want to examine in the rest of the oral cavity?
For pre-malignant lesions, leukoplakia, erythroplakia, floor of the mouth.
Yeah, apart from that, leukoplakia, erythroplakia, and
Submucosal fibrosis, mouth opening.
yes, you did not mention about the mouth opening and about the fibrosis.
Mouth opening was normal on inspection.
Normal.
Yeah.
There is no submucous fibrosis, right?
Ma'am,
So where does early submucous fibrosis come? I mean, even before you see the mouth opening issues, where do you see the early signs of submucous fibrosis?
In the buccal mucosa?
No, it's in the palatoglossus.
Okay.
In the palate and the palatoglossal fold, that's where you'll see early submucous fibrosis.
Okay.
And the other thing that you haven't asked is whether he had sharp tooth. Because from the picture, it looks like his enamel is all sharp and pointy. So you have to look at the predisposing factors to develop a buccal carcinoma. So one is history of habits. Second is any pre-malignant lesions progressing to malignancy. Third is local irritant factors like sharp tooth or displaced tooth or maloccluded teeth or constant cheek bite. Those are the other things that you'll have to look for in history. But if you want to expand your history, you have a lesion in the buccal mucosa going to the lower gingivobuccal sulcus. What is the most important thing you want to know from history in this patient? You forget your MR, you forget your CT, all that you forget.
Okay.
What is the most
Did not mention that.
that you'd want to find out in this patient from history?
Whether it's extending into the retromolar, whether it's extending.
No, what you want to find out
into the mandible.
history.
If it's extending into the mandible. Yeah? Whether it's extending into the mandible.
Pain and paresthesia, whether there's a perineural involvement.
So perineural involvement can present in multiple ways. You can have undefined, non-localized pain for perineural invasion, or you can have paresthesia. So you didn't mention about lip and mental paresthesia.
Yes.
And if there's gross perineural invasion, you also have to look at V2 territory because they're all the same trigeminal nerve. So you have to look at infraorbital paresthesia. But more importantly, you have to look for the involvement of the periodontal ligaments. So whether he's got any loose teeth or whether he's got any dental work done in the recent past.
Okay.
Because those will indicate to you superficial mandibular erosion, whereas the canal involvement where the nerve is involved will result in paresthesia. So in a buccal mucosa, only two things you need to know from a reconstructive and excision point of view. Do you need to excise the skin and do you need to excise the mandible?
Yes.
And if this tumor was posterior, obviously in the RMT, you will have to think whether you need to excise the pterygoid muscle and the infratemporal fossa.
Yes, sir.
So from your history, you need to come. So trismus will indicate masticatory space or posterior extension. A tooth loosening will indicate superficial cortical erosion or cortical invasion. And paresthesias will indicate mandibular canal invasion. So it's not the lip and chin paresthesia alone, even the tongue paresthesia, because the lingual nerve also splits from V3 at the lingula. Yeah, the V3 splits at the lingula into the inferior alveolar nerve and the lingual nerve. So your entire history from a resection point of view depends on only these things. Do I resect the mandible? Do I resect the skin? Do I resect contents of the infratemporal fossa with the masticatory muscles? Everything else you said was absolutely fine. No problems.
Okay.
It's not fixed to the mandible, right? You have mentioned that.
It's not extending to the mandible, ma'am.
So you could feel some healthy tissue between the ulcer and the mandible? Because it's in the buccogingival sulcus. You said it's a lesion arising in the buccal mucosa and extending into the buccogingival sulcus. That's what you said, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So is there any healthy tissue between, I mean, you are not able to palpate any inside?
No, I've not palpated this.
Yeah, yes, it's a picture, right? But clinically, if this is the situation, you have to see whether the ulcer is free from the mandible or it is just adjacent to the mandible, expanding to the retromolar trigone. Even if it is not involving, even if it is extending, also it's very important because your
In order to give clearance.
clearance. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Then suppose, okay, then what's your about the neck nodes?
So
Can you just tell
yeah, mention about the neck nodes, please.
neck nodes?
Yeah, on inspection, there were no scars and there was no obvious swelling. On palpation, there were multiple lymph nodes at levels 1, 2, and 3. At level 1, there was a single lymph node of size 2 into 2 centimeters, single firm mobile lymph node. A similar single lymph nodes at level 2 and 3 as well on the right, on the ipsilateral side.
In a buccal mucosa carcinoma, which is the hidden lymph node, which you generally don't palpate,
I'm not sure.
which is obvious on imaging or introp. It's the prefacial lymph nodes. It's the lymph nodes which lie over the mandible adjacent to the facial vessels. That is the first echelon for a buccal carcinoma tumor, not level 2. So
Okay.
in your imaging, when you speak to your radiologist, you have to make sure that there is no prefacial node involvement, because in a normal neck dissection, your upper boundary of the neck dissection is the lower part of the mandible.
Yes.
But if you find a prefacial necrotic node, you've got to include the prefacial node by dissecting, by pushing the marginal mandibular nerve above. And so your point of interest is prefacial, level 2, level 3, and the level 4 lymph nodes. That is fine. That is not a problem at all.
Okay.
In your imaging,
And investigations, yeah, I just want to ask the same thing. It's MRI.
ma'am?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So, are you able to do the MRI for the bone? I mean, does it give a good information about the bone?
CT would have been a better option.
CT would be better. MRI gives only information
A
about.
soft tissue involvement, whereas CT would be a better for mandibular involvement.
So it says thickening of the tissue just adjacent to the mandible. So it doesn't really give a conclusive evidence that mandible is not involved, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you want to do a CT for this again?
I would like to do a CT head and neck.
What sort of CT would you like to do?
A CT with 3D reconstruction.
You do a CT with 3D reconstruction when there is cortical or cortical loss of the bone, or there's cortical expansion for you to plan. But what would you do? There is a specific maneuver that you do to
Puffed cheek
yeah,
maneuver.
you do a puff cheek. That is possible in CT, but not in MR, because MR there's a lot of rendering
takes a lot.
artifacts with movement. There's a lot of rendering artifacts with movement.
Okay.
What I said, the cortical bone on MR gives you a black signal. It doesn't give you any characteristics at all. But if you want to plan your lateral excision, so let's say you want to excise this buccal cancer,
Okay, sir.
right? So
Yes,
you've
sir.
done your imaging. What are the things that you'd look for in imaging? You have to do a combination of CT and MR, especially for buccal and tongue. Tongue, there's no need for CT at all. Tongue MR is the best. For buccal, there's a combination of MR with bone cuts on the CT. So
Okay, sir.
what are the things that you'd like to see in the imaging? You made a provisional diagnosis of a buccal tumor, T3, N3, N2, whatever. So to plan your excision, what are the specific things that you'd look for in the MR?
One is retromolar extension, retromolar trigone extension.
Why is that important?
Um, uh, you have to plan the excision based on there'll be
What is the problem with the retromolar trigone area being involved?
there is there probably invasion of the nerves as well as the muscles of mass.
No, so the retromolar trigone, the periosteum is tightly adherent to the bone. There's no real barrier to bone invasion. So even early retromolar trigone extension or invasion can result in bone invasion.
Okay.
Yes, And
Yes,
if
sir.
the bone is invaded, then you have the medial pterygoid muscle that is attached to the
With
angle of the mandible.
mandible that has.
So retromolar trigones have one, propensity for early bone invasion, and two, propensity to involve the medial pterygoid, which will change your approach completely. It is not how you're going to exercise, it's going to change your approach completely. So one, so you're looking at the posterior extent, that is your retromolar trigone, excellent. What about the lateral extension?
Into the skin.
So
No,
before
into
the
the
skin, you have,
buccinator muscles.
so what happens if the buccinator is involved? What do you look for next?
The patient, uh, the muscles of mastication will also get
No,
involved.
the
So,
muscles of mastication is posterior, that's masseter.
No,
yeah,
no. You have
Buccinator is anterior to masseter.
yeah.
What do you look for if buccinator is involved?
No, she has mentioned it in the presentation. You just remember that. You have mentioned it. The skin is
Yeah, I think you
Skin,
mentioned the skin was
skin,
pinchable and all.
skin is not.
Yeah, but then you always look for the subcutaneous fat
Buck.
to see if the subcutaneous fat is involved, if there's any dermal stranding present, which
Okay.
means that you might have to sacrifice the skin. Okay, so that is lateral. What do you look for anteriorly?
The commissure involvement.
yeah.
Commission
Uh,
involvement is a clinical diagnosis, so you can make it out with clinical examination if the
uh,
commissioner is involved.
then the nerve perineural involvement of the
Yeah,
inferior
so you
and
want to see the widening of the mental foramen and
forearm.
enhancement along the mental nerve, and you
Uh,
compare that with the opposite side. That is correct. But
then
in a patient who's got poor oral hygiene like this,
uh,
a person who's got dental caries and dental fillings and dental work like this, you know that the MRI can give false positive results.
okay.
So the only way to confirm whether the marrow is involved or whether you're clear in your
CT.
resection is to do a frozen
CT.
section on
Frozen.
table. No, frozen section on table is the most foolproof method of making sure that the marrow and the canal beyond your excision is clear.
Okay.
That's fine. So you have come to a clinical diagnosis. Your MR is showing confined disease. So what else would you like to look at? What is the most important thing apart from retromolar trigone, lateral buccinator, anterior mental nerve? What is the other thing that you'd like to see?
Synchronous lesions on.
Synchronous lesions, if they're mucosal, you'll make it out on pan endoscopy.
Yes.
If they're submucosal or muscular, you'll make it out on MR. But more
MR.
than that, what is paramandibular involvement?
I'm not sure, sir.
Indirect
Around close to,
No, make a wild guess. What do you mean? It's a self-explanatory in the world. What is paramandibular involvement?
close to the mandible, extension into the periost.
Yeah, close to the mandible. Where? The
Floor
lingual
of
cortex.
floor
Buccal
of
cortex. Lingual
lingual
cortex or
buccal
no? Buccal cortex.
buccal cortex.
So why is paramandibular invasion an important thing on imaging? Because
Uh,
paramandibular invasion can never be made out clinically because
uh,
it's deep mucosal. Why is paramandibular invasion so important?
so that you can decide on the extent of clearance, you need to give a 1 centimeter margin. If
That
it is close less than tum
that decides whether you can do a marginal or a
margin segment.
marginal or a segmental. If there is gross paramandibular involvement, which
Uh,
can never be made out on clinical examination, meaning between the gingivo-buccal sulcus, the tumor is infiltrating towards the neck and
okay.
adhering to the periosteum of the mandible. So in your imaging, if you find gross paramandibular extension, most commonly it's on the buccal side, rarely it's on the lingual side, then your approach will not be a conservative mandibular resection, but it will be more of a
Segment.
radical mandibular resection.
Okay, sir.
Yeah?
Yes, sir.
So these are the things that you have to remember. RMT, if the bone is involved, again, very difficult to do a marginal excision. You will end up with segmental. If the canal is involved, you'll end up with segmental. If marrow is involved, you'll end up with segmental. And if there is paramandibular invasion, you'll end up with segmental.
Why do
Okay.
you, Benedict, why do you end up with a segmental resection when retromolar trigone is involved? It's
Uh,
difficult to do a marginal in that situation. Why?
Because the mucosa of the retromolar trigone is closely adherent to the periosteum of the mandible.
Right. So outer cortex
So-
can move.
You need to give a one clearance.
Only the periodontal is taken. Outer cortex is if there is
So,
any erosion in the retromolar trigone, we can't remove a outer cortex or inner cortex or marginal. You have to remove a segment there in that particular situation. Right?
Yes.
There is some nerve there actually.
what comes between the heads of the lateral pterygoid? Lateral pterygoid has two heads. Yeah, one from the sphenoid base and one from the condyle. What comes between the lateral head of the pterygoids, the two heads of the pterygoids? So, whilst it's theoretically possible to do a marginal mandibulectomy for a retromolar trigone, you will have to go through the sigmoid notch vertically, and then you'll have to come to the angle and then to the horizontal ramus. It's quite difficult. But like ma'am said, the V3 is very close to the retromolar trigone.
Okay.
So you don't know if there is early invasion of V3 and early invasion of
Okay.
the pterygoid muscles because of the proximity of those things to the retromolar trigone. And retromolar trigone has a lot of submucous disease. That is very, very important to remember.
Okay.
Submucosal spread in a retromolar trigone is much more than what you can anticipate or see clinically.
Okay, sir.
And the chances of post-op trismus with a conservative resection at the retromandibular trigone is more because you are causing a lot of fibrosis amongst the muscles of mastication. So your functional end results of that resection also might not be appropriate. Might be oncologically correct, but might not be appropriate.
Okay, sir.
So
Yeah.
that's the reason. With all these reasons, retromolar trigone has got the worst prognosis in the oral cancers. Next comes the buccal mucosa.
Yes.
Okay, then. Now, what's your plan? You have said egg biopsy. CT, we have to do a CT. Then
To confirm investigations to confirm my diagnosis, one would be the wedge part.
it's confirmed. You said it's P3, phase 3 disease, right?
Yes, stage.
Did you inquire about his personal habits like smoking and
He's a tobacco chewer since last 30 years.
no smoking? No history of smoking.
Uh, no, no, ma'am.
Well, that is very important. What ma'am asked is very important because if he has 30 pack years of smoking, the risk for synchronous oropharyngeal, laryngopharyngeal, esophageal primaries and lung primary increase by sixfold. So you have to do a CT chest to rule out parenchymal lesions and mediastinal nodes. And like you rightly mentioned, a pan endoscopy to look for mucosal lesions which are not manifest on image.
Visible.
You have to do that. So there's a clear-cut demarcation between tobacco chewing, tobacco smoking, again filtered, unfiltered cigarettes, white liquor versus brown liquor. There's a lot of epidemiology regarding that causative factors. But if he has a history of smoking, before you embark on such major operations, you may have to make sure that the patient does not have a more pressing primary that needs to be treated. If the same patient had a very large lung primary, the lung primary will take precedence in treatment compared to this buccal mucosa tumor, which can be, easily excised. So history of smoking, like ma'am said, is a very important thing. Especially somebody who's got 30 pack years of smoking would definitely be at high risk for esophageal or for lung parenchyma primaries.
Okay, sir.
Apart from that, some more precautions with smokers. What else you would like to do for your
Yeah.
maximum part?
While planning reconstruction, you have to ask them to stop smoking because it takes 2 weeks prior to surgery, at least 2 weeks.
If you are planning a free flap, vessels problems will be there. And also lung complications, because all these smokers, they have compromised lungs.
Compromise lung.
A poor lung reserve.
So that is also very important. Okay. And why the buccogingival sulcus is the common site for all these Buccal tumors?
They hold the quid chewable tobacco in the sulcus region for a long time, and
Even if they don't hold also, all the juices, they tend to accumulate in that gutter. That's the reason. That's one reason.
That is correct, ma'am. There is two regions in the oral cavity where there is stasis of saliva with carcinogens. One is the gingival-buccal sulcus, but more importantly is the floor of mouth.
floor of the mouth.
So both the floor of mouth and gingival-buccal sulcus are high risk regions for those who chew and suck on tobacco quid, because that's where most of the saliva laden with carcinogens usually settles. So you have to examine those areas also closely so that you're not missing another mucosal primary there.
Okay.
Then now what's your management?
Yeah, I would like to do a wide local excision of the tumor with a 1 centimeter margin all around, with simultaneous reconstruction of the defect, with a right-sided modified radical neck dissection, frozen section to confirm the adequate tumor margin clearance, and adjuvant radiotherapy and chemotherapy based on my histopathology. So for
Wide local excision, will it be sufficient? That's all. Anything else you want to add there?
all around wide local excision.
If the tumor is extending to the buccogingival sulcus,
With marginal mandibulectomy.
then almost until the canine teeth, canine and posteriorly to
Up from canine up to the second molar. So I'd like to also do a marginal mandibulectomy.
so simple wide local excision, you won't get any margin. So you have to do a marginal mandibulectomy and wide local excision and modified radical neck. So tell me the incision, various incisions for the modified.
So I would want to do a lip splitting incision for adequate through an intraoral approach for a marginal mandibulectomy. We want to do a lip split incision as well to assist.
Mouth opening is adequate, right?
Lip split so that marginal mandibulectomy is easier to.
Not really mandatory, but yes, some people do it.
With intraoral excision of the tumor with marginal mandibulectomy from the incisors up to the last molar. And then with the lip split incision extending to a modified Schobinger incision to assist in the lymph node modified radical neck dissection.
Deepak, you always do the lip split for this kind of patients when the mouth opening is adequate?
Yes, ma'am, because it's quite difficult to do the marginal mandibulectomy to assess the depth of the mandible that you're resecting. So doing a lip split is not a problem.
Yeah.
Provided you incorporate a Z-plasty in the lip incision so that you avoid scar contracture. The lip split doesn't cause too much of morbidity that way. The problem with
oncologists, most of the time they try to do intraoral. So
it's nonsense, ma'am. You shouldn't do a marginal unless it's an anterior marginal between canine to canine. Any posterior marginal, you won't have any control over the depth of the mandible that is resected, ma'am. Especially because the posterior resection is going to be vertical. The posterior cut of the mandible is going to be vertical rather than horizontal. So if you do a peroral excision, you will sliver the posterior cut, you will go deep in the mid cut, and then you'll go deep in the anterior cut, which is not oncologically correct. So I would accept a midline lip split with a Z-plasty to expose the mandible completely, because you're not adding too much morbidity if you suture back the orbicularis and the lip mucosa and vermilion properly post-op. And if you put a Z-plasty in the lip incision, there'll be no contracture or reversion of lip or effacement of the vestibule. So lip split is okay, ma'am. I think it's perfectly okay for this lesion, ma'am.
Madam, more than that, even when we do, like, I mean, instead of the oncologist, they do oncologists most of the time, as madam says, they'll do a peroral excision. Yeah. Deepak?
Sir?
Deepak?
Sir?
See, as Madam says, oncologists, they prefer peroral excision, but even when we do primarily excise the CHE, we always prefer the lip splitting incision because access wise also it is quite easy and we can always, yeah,
100%, sir. Because
yeah,
oncology is all about
yeah,
exposure. Unless you expose the tumor,
yeah,
you can't excise.
exposite
And
tumor,
I've
yeah,
seen
that is why.
oncologists cut the mandible, leaving behind the tooth roots inside the mandible. They will saw through the tooth roots, and that will become ORN in 6 months.
Yeah, that is what.
So the marginal mandibulectomy has to be at the level of the inferior alveolar nerve or the mental nerve. Unless you see them, because the mental nerve, the inferior alveolar canal, lies below the roots of the teeth.
Yes.
Unless you can mark a horizontal line from the inferior alveolar exit, that is a mental foramen, posteriorly, you will not be. You can always extract the teeth and do a marginal, but that is not the way to do it.
It's not,
But you
yeah,
need to see the level of the mental nerve so that you stay below the tooth roots. There is no point sawing across the tooth roots and leaving behind tooth remnants because that will become osteomyelitic once the patient
similarly.
finishes
Yeah,
radiation. And you're going to cover that with a flap also.
yes.
So exposure is everything in oncology. You have to expose the tumor because only one shot at curing the patient. You can't do haphazard job and come back and re-clear. I always do a lip split for this lesion, sir.
Lip split. Even for
Lip or
tongue also sometimes I do mandibulotomy and then
100% accepted.
yeah, it's
100% accepted, sir.
safe rather than
100%
safe to be.
accepted.
It's better to be safe than to be sorry to the patient.
Any day, sir. Any day. There
Yeah,
should be no compromise on exposure
yeah,
and oncology, sir.
Only along
yes.
with the oncologists. So the oncologists always they used to do intraoral excisions whenever the
Ma'am, I
amount of
fight with oncologists all the time. So I would have done
Even some
many I've done, ma'am. It doesn't work.
actually
Ma'am.
I'm
I
here,
tried the intraoral
sometimes I
excisions.
used to open it because flap insert is very cumbersome and it's
Yes, ma'am.
traumatizing.
Yes, ma'am.
and it's I mean,
Exposure is
Actually.
paramount.
and
Exposure is
we
everything.
do not know. We do not know. We may be working through the intraoral approach. You're unnecessarily trying to seed the oral cavity and all. It's safe when you do a lip split or when you do a mandibulotomy for tongue tumor excision. We can definitely directly access the lesion and then we can work on it.
100%,
That
sir.
is always
100%.
better.
So there's
Yeah,
no doubt. You don't have to explain
yeah,
at all, sir. There is no doubt in this
yeah,
matter at all.
yeah.
What you're saying is paradigm go. You
Not
cannot
only
change
that,
this concept.
Yes,
it's for very comfortable for the flap insert and also for the pedicle
yes,
arrangement, everything.
yes, yes, yes,
It is
yes.
very, very comfortable, ma'am. Because ultimately, you want the surgery to be safe oncologically and reconstruction wise. So you would want to get the maximum exposure possible for you to direct the pedicle and to direct your insert also. And you should never leave behind any tooth remnant in the mandible. If you leave it, I'll guarantee 100% they will come back to you with ORN in 1 year time.
Yes.
Because those tooth roots are devitalized, they'll get infected, and patient will come back with ORN. So our aim is not only to remove the upper part of the mandible, but also to remove the tooth and its remnants together with that specimen. And that is only possible if you have a vertical or horizontal line where the inferior alveolar nerve exits, because above that is where the tooth roots are. And that gives you a
Exactly.
1 centimeter margin for the stability of the lower rim of the mandible also.
Do you advocate any biopsy of the inferior alveolar canal?
No, sir. If the MR shows enhancement in the T1 contrast or
Okay.
there's widening of the foramen on CT,
Okay.
then the problem is, sir, if you sacrifice the inferior alveolar mental nerve, patient will lose lip sensitivity and commissure competence
Yes.
anyways.
Yes.
They will lose commissure competence.
Yes.
So it is as good as destroying the commissure by surgery.
Yes.
So unless the imaging warrants, I never take a mental nerve biopsy because in effect, if you deneurotize the commissure, patient will have an incompetent commissure on that side.
Yes.
Because there will be no sensation, patient will be drooling for half the lip.
Yes.
So I won't do it unless I'm in severe doubt like that, sir.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, then we can carry on.
Okay. Yes.